The Hundred Years' War. When France's king died without a son and the royal family had a dispute, and it became one of the most brutal and longest conflicts in European history. The Hundred Years' War. And it went for, no, longer than 100 years. Let's dive into it in this first episode of the history of the Hundred Years' War. The Hundred Years' War. Welcome, everybody. My name is Daniel, and thank you for joining History Talks. I love history, anything about history, so I'm going to do some episodes on them. Just a preface, I do not have a history degree as much as I would like one, but I am a huge enthusiast of history and just love going through different parts. So we're going to go through the Hundred Years' War in this episode, and we're going to look at the causes and what happened before that war and how it got started. But before we do, the reason why I think I started with this period of time in history amongst the many amazing sections or areas or places, it is probably because of my love of the game Europa Universalis 4. I've played lots and lots of hours on this game, and I'm sure that for anyone who has played this game, if you look at a European map around this time period, you will all have lots of things to say about it, lots of conquests that you've done yourself in this game, and there is lots of duchies and small nations broken up. France is very broken up as well, and obviously Europa Universalis starts in the year 1444, right at the end of the Hundred Years' War. And the new game is coming out in a month, Europa Universalis 5, and of course the starting date for Europa Universalis 5 is a month before the Hundred-Year War begins. So that's where my inspiration came from, and as I said, I've racked up lots of hours on this game. Love the historical context, and obviously we will go into that further. But yeah, that's where the Hundred Years' War start is in 1337, and I will probably be rushing out to pre-order the game as well when it comes out. But let's get back to it. So, the Hundred Years' War. Let's get into it, shall we? So I'll give you a bit of an overview of what it is. And basically, it was a conflict between the kingdoms of England and France. As we all know, England and France have not got along together for a very long time. It's complicated. It's a on-again, off-again relationship and has gone through hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years of conflict and intermarrying and all these other things. So the Hundred Years' War actually emerged from different feudal disputes in the area, and specifically the Duchy of Aquitaine, and eventually this war spread into most of Western Europe. Now, as I said in the intro, it wasn't exactly 100 years of war. It was around 116 years, and it wasn't a continuous time either, because it was often interrupted by different external factors, so it was a very, much like their relationship, it was very on again, off again, and there was different reasons for it to be paused and restarted, and obviously the Black Death was the biggest one of all, because it enveloped all of Europe. So where are we? So let's go back to the year 1328. So Charles IV of France. And what happened was he had died. And the key issue was the disputed succession to the French throne after the death of Charles IV. And Edward III of England claimed the French crown through his mother, but the French nobility rejected his claim based on the Salic law, and they favoured Philippe VI instead of the House of Valois. And obviously with royal families there is lots of intermarrying and claims, and most marriages were for either convenience or alliance related, and lots of different reasons. But Charles the Fourth died, and then that was one of the triggers. Not all the triggers, obviously, but one of the triggers. And I'm reading one of the history books that I'm reading is by a guy, that has done lots of history of the war, and he has written plenty of books about the entire history, and it was from Jonathan Sumption, if I've got that right, in 2011. He wrote 2 volumes on this specifically. So one of the passages that I read regarding this was that France in 1328 occupied a position of apparent strength but real weakness. Charles the Fourth had ruled a territory somewhat smaller than that of modern France. To the north, it included the whole county of Flanders and the western part of what is now Belgium. But in the east, the kingdom extended no further than the Meuse, the Saône, and the Rhône. And Hainault, Lorraine, part of the Burgundy, the Dauphiné, Savoy, and the whole of Provence lay outside of it. So there's lots of little duchies and territories that are involved. And although much of the territory was French-speaking and their rulers moved in the political orbit of France, Lyon had been French for barely 20 years when Charles IV died, and east of Lyon lay the territory which was still part of the German Empire. So this is a complicated, if you look at the map, you will see it is just a butchery of little duchies and small nations. And a lawyer pope waiting to be the king of France in 1265 might wonder whether Viviers, a cathedral city on the west bank of the Rhone, was in France or the German Empire. This is in that book that I was telling you. We find the boundaries between your kingdom and the empire nowhere recorded in writing, and we have no idea where they run. And that was written by that lawyer pope. So even he thought it was contested about 80 years earlier. So that's the main catalyst of what was happening in this time. But obviously, we need to go back a lot further. And obviously, 1066 is where some of the origins of this war began, because this is the Norman conquest of England in 1066, a very famous event in history, where the English crown came under rulers who had lands and claims in France, and they set a foundation for a centuries-long conflict. As I said, France and England do not get along. They have an on and off again relationship throughout history. But France in 1328 occupied a position of what looked like was strength, but it was actually weakness. Charles had ruled a territory smaller than that of modern France, so it was quite small. And to the north it included the whole of Flanders and the western part of what is now Belgium. But in the east, the kingdom again was in that small part, and it was just a very, very... Paris itself was a very 100,000 population apparently, and compared to London of 40,000, so it was a very much a rabbit warren of different housing and markets, and they were all built up, and it was this very melting pot of people as well. And agriculturally, between 1323 and 1328, a civil war broke out with savagery between landowners and peasants of Western Flanders, so they had that going on as well. And obviously these were harbingers of bigger problems as well, because the other tensions that arose through this was competition over the wool trade, where English wool was essential to the Flemish textile industry. And there was a region that was allied to France, and then control over the trade routes in the English Channel was another point of conflict with all those naval powers that were in the region. So you've got a huge melting pot starting to happen and point towards that 1337 deadline. Now, around this time there was just so many things happening, and then there was those feudal rivalries as well. So obviously you had the big alliances, but then there was different feudal rivalries and political alliances as well, and these further escalated all the tensions. So the English possession of French lands just in different parts of France along the coast, where England actually had a stronghold and land in different parts, some on the western side and some at the north. It actually created conflicting loyalties between the English kings and vassals of the French crown because, yeah, they were some French, some British territories. And then obviously France was allied with Scotland, and we all know how much Scotland loves England. And so you had France allied with Scotland, and Scotland, of course, is England's most hated enemy. And that contributed as well because obviously the Scottish fight for independence had been going on and raging for the decades earlier, and you had Edward Longshanks's great grandson now in power as well. I think it was his great grandson, correct me if I'm wrong. And all these different things happening, all these rivalries. And then that led to the Casus Belli. Now, if you've played the Europa Universalis games, the CB is one of the big points of the game where you can declare war and have a reason to declare war on someone. Because the major cause was the dispute over territorial control, especially in the English-held Duchy of Gascony in southwest France. And that was a French fief, but economically important to England because of its wine trade. And when Philippe VI tried to confiscate Gascony in 1337, here we go, this became a direct casus belli for England to declare war. And that is some of the overview of the points leading up to it. Now, this led to the gearing up of war. And if you look at this map here, you can see all these little tiny duchies and territories, and it was just so fragmented. But it set the stage for a prolonged conflict beginning in 1337, and obviously lasted for over a century. And there was plenty of famous battles in that, plenty of famous people in that. And you've got like Crécy, Poitiers, and Agincourt, and lots of political development, lots of diseases, lots of famous people. And we're going to unpack quite a lot of those in the episodes to come. But I just wanted to share the overview of what was happening at the time, all those different things. But thank you for joining me on this video, and I hope you can continue to join. And yeah, thank you for watching, and if you like it, give it a like, and if you want to subscribe, just hit that subscribe button. That will support the channel. Thank you very much. See you on the next video. Bye.